Hello, it's my pleasure to introduce Dr. Esther Ngumbi, who is an assistant professor in the Department of Entomology and African American Studies. Dr. Ngumbi is an author, an educator, and a champion for change in various areas such as education, activism, and public service. And among many of the recognition for her work, she recently received the award, the Damiel Baumick Award for Public Engagement with Science from the American Association for the Advancement of Science, and she also received the Engineering and Technology Difference Maker of the Year from the Institute of Engineering and Technology. And so with that, it's my pleasure to welcome Dr. Esther Ngumbi, who will be giving us a lecture on communicating research with the public. Thank you.
Okay. So can everybody hear me? Those tuned in online? Can I get a thumb up?
I can hear you.
Awesome. Okay, thank you again for everyone that's here and tuning in online. I appreciate this opportunity to speak with you about a subject that I so much appreciate and love. I am so passionate about science communication and more so bridging the gap between all the beautiful work we do in our institutions and in research institutions around the world, and ensuring that all that work is valuable not only to us, but to the public, to the end users. So I appreciate, again, this opportunity. So I'm not going to waste a lot of your time. I think the world today is full of many challenges. We are still going through the pandemic that keeps mutating and having new variants, COVID-19, our climate change. I think if you've already been following, we've already hit, I think the United Nations Secretary says the red code for humanity. I mean, climate change is a big, big thing. Of course, accompanying climate change is declining biodiversity, the animals we love, the insects that I love. I am an entomologist, and so we know that the research, according to recent literature, we are losing a lot of our important species. Food insecurity, it's only getting worse. Sometimes we may not be able to see it living in the United States, but it's a big issue around the world. Of course, unhealthy ecosystems, polluted environments, invasive species, and so on. I could go on with so many challenges that our world faces today. But the good news is that science generates many solutions to these challenges. Some of you are already in the front line. You're in the lab, you're in the research area, researching, finding the solutions to all these challenges. And I know that I am also part of that group, the scientists, that is actively in my lab finding solutions to these challenges. And we know it is. Science is finding and is generating these solutions. Many of you already have the booster shot. We've already gotten a COVID vaccine. And we know that there's so many solutions every day that are generated by science. We know even 2020 Nobel Prize went to scientists, and every year we have Nobel Prize being awarded to scientists that have generated solutions that not only serve as solutions to only a few of us, but to the entire world. CRISPR, for example, we know that it's going to revolutionize medicine and many of our challenges. So science is there, finding the solutions every day. And I'm a scientist too, as again, I am an assistant professor here. I'm an entomologist, and my research is on beneficial soil microbes, insect-plant interactions, and some of my research results eventually help our farmers deal with changing climate, ensuring that we can sustainably feed ourselves now and into the future. And so I know I'm in the front line. Every day I come to work because I love what I'm doing. At the end, I also work with farmers, so I see the solutions being utilized by farmers, and it just inspires me to continue working. Good news about that, but the problem, however, is that a lot of this work is still locked up in journals. And the other day I gave a similar lecture and asked the students, how many students ever even read a journal and read all these articles that are published every day? Most chances are only the few of us that are in academia, we read them. And we only read them because we have to do. I bet you if you don't have to do, most of the time you won't read, because it's so, even when you read, it's so complicated to understand. There's a lot of science jargon. And if me as a scientist, and many of you as scientists, can't get into the meat of the work, now think of the public that doesn't even, is not trained in such a field, for example. So clearly, there's an issue. And again, so just reiterating all this science and all these amazing discoveries that happen every day, all these peer manuscripts that are written every day, they're full in science, nature, PNS, and all the disciplines. There's all these journals. Rarely is this work meaningful to the public and to policymakers. And this was a 2015 report that shared that in a year, for example, 3 million papers, and only 10 people actually take time to read an entire manuscript, for example, from the abstract to the discussion and conclusion. So clearly, something needs to be done. Clearly, all our work is still locked up. And there are reasons as to why all these novel findings, all this amazing research is still locked up in our journals. First of all, I mean, I'm an assistant professor. Most importantly, is a lot of the rewards that come in academic don't really reward translating our science to the public. No, I'm rewarded for getting that manuscript. How many manuscripts did I publish in a year? That's what a lot of the academic tenure dossiers want to see. Or I wrote an opinion piece, or I gave a lecture outreach. It's almost treated just as a secondary. If you have the time, do it. Will you get credit for it? No, it's hard. But of course, I think the culture is changing. I know that. I know, for example, the University of Illinois, they have a new communication line dossier, and I think it's going to value public engagement with science. Really scientists that not only do the work, but also do a lot of just outreach. Of course, if it's not the culture, many of us think we are not trained. And it's true. Most of us are not trained about science communication. We are trained in our field. I was trained as an entomologist. So all the science communication, I've had to learn it. I've had to find the time to learn it. It's not ingrained all the way from undergraduate, through our graduate studies, through postdoc. So there's not that, even when we get again hired, there's not that integration of science communication training. And again, no real incentive. So you just have to be passionate about it and do it and hope that eventually the culture is changing, but I'm glad that it's changing. Of course, again, there's a society for those of us that decide, okay, I'm going to be this, I'm going to, yes.
I'm sorry, I think we might have accidentally gotten sound on your laptop.
Okay.
So I think it was the person who's second on her screen, that was the making the.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay, that's what it looks like.
Okay, thank you for that. Again, some of the reasons, anxiety, yes, if you're not trained, you're like, I probably will mess up. I probably will say something or write something, and of course, probably you're gonna be misquoted, and then it's gonna, your professor, your major professor, your boss, the university. So there are all this, you're afraid, and yeah, of course, everything you put out once it's out, it belongs to you. It can backfire, it can be misquoted, and all of that, and that's I know that for me, I felt the same way. I still feel the same way. I still am anxious. Every time I still do my science communication stuff, I still have that 5% that knows that it could go wrong. And I could get all these calls from my university, like, what did you say? What did you do? I could be an outlier, but should I just keep quiet and not do it? I think no. But the good news again is science communication is a skill. It can be learned. You can approach it methodically and you can break it into steps. You can really, if you say, I want to learn to be able to do a podcast, you can find resources. You can learn how to do a podcast. If you say, okay, I want to have a YouTube channel, you can do that. If you say, I want to do science communication via opinion pieces, you can write, you can find resources to facilitate your journey, to facilitate your growth, and to facilitate your ability to keep getting better as a science communicator. I know, and I believe in these words exactly that for me, I know that science is not finished until it's communicated. And not just communicated in our manuscript or peer-reviewed. After that paper is out, that's not the end of science. There's a journey that's beyond just publishing. I think, okay, I'm going then to argue why I think that we need to communicate science. I think when you think about the time and resources that we, as scientists, spend on research, just thinking through, reading through all the work to get your research idea, formulating your questions, and going through all that, and then doing experiments that sometimes, I know sometimes you dedicate 6 months into doing something, and it fails after 6 months, sometimes a year, sometimes even 2 years, and you have negative results. I don't know if after all this time you just want to end, and then at the end of the manuscript, you probably will just get one citation. You know, if you're not really up into your career or something, you might just even never get recited by your peers. After all that work, I think it's just important to truly just think of, and then the funds and resources. Public funds our work. Again, I think the more we communicate our science, the more we inspire the next generation. We have to keep the pipeline of science going. I know that I don't want to be the only scientist. I want to inspire a rainbow of scientists. And so the more we share, the more people are like, oh, wow, engineering, what does engineering take? What do you do in your work? The more you talk, the more you make it exciting, the more people want to say, you know what, I think I will get into science because it seems like so-and-so is having fun. So-and-so is actually having a wonderful time. I think science also is important. It is what the data, the results are used to ensure that policies are written and policies are made. And those policies affect you and me. At the end of the day, policies, laws, and everything end up affecting us. And so it's important that good science is out there and it's communicated so that policymakers are able to use the best of the science to make these policies. And I think it's important that the public understands science. Why bother? I know that the public too wants to know what's going on, and they're seeking information. According to Pew Research, yes, 1 in 6 Americans actively seek out frequently and consume science news. And we want them to be able to consume news that are from the scientists, not fake news, because you know what? There's a lot of fake news. There's a lot of fake science out there. And so we want to make sure that the public that is seeking authentic science, at the end of the day, they're out there, they're reading NPR, they're listening to CNN, they want to make sure that they are getting the accurate information. So if we don't do it, then of course they will listen to something, and news and fake science will be an issue. But if you decide again that for all these arguments, for the sake of science, yes, if we take the step of communicating science, again, the public is reached. Of course, we facilitate the use of our results because guess what? The private sector hears about the wonderful results that you've produced from your work. Can the results be translated in products, for example? I know, for example, some of my PhD work and research, we were able to find that certain natural microbes do enhance plant growth. And because of communicating and working with the industry, products are being made, and those products are going to be utilized by farmers. So if that work is just put in a journal and never shared, chances are nobody will hear about it. Chances are the industry won't use it. Of course, again, if you do it well, when you share your work, you can also facilitate more funding of your work. You can help change policies, and of course, as you communicate, you become better as a communicator, as a writer. It's almost like it's growth. You also grow as an expert in your field because you grow as somebody also that people can come to and ask you about what's going on in the field. But without doing that and doing it consistently too. Consistently is important because you can't decide today I'll be a communicator and then I'll come back in 2 years. So once you step up and say, okay, I want to be a science communicator, then you want to keep growing, I believe. I think it benefits the society. I think when we scientists actively participate in disseminating our work, it just benefits everyone. But of course, if we don't, we know that there are consequences. We've had to march for science. We've had to convince everybody that science is important. I don't think we need to get that because all of us are just still up there in our ivory tower, comfortable in our labs. Yes, I think if we don't partake of science communication, yes, there'll be consequences. And of course, yes, we know. I mean, this was a survey that was done, and people were asked if they could name even female scientists. They can't name scientists. Kids were asked to draw the image of a scientist. You know what they do, white men, because they don't see other people that are communicating. They don't see that. We are all stuck in our, amazing research centers. We're actively producing good work. But if we don't really step away from the lab, communicate, then we create this image that science can only be done by a few people. But yet we know our labs, our institutions are full of amazing variety and diversity. It's almost a rainbow of scientists. And we want to, lesbian, gay, everyone. There's so much diversity. And if you watch news, I know if I watch news, sometimes I have to turn off the news because they keep on bringing the same people, white scientists, men. And I'm like, what? Don't we have really anybody else that can give an opinion about this? And then as a marginalized person, I'm like, okay, then I can never be in this field. I look at the children that are watching. They never see a career in themselves because guess what they don't see? Consistently, they assume that the people that can comment about the scientists are only this. So I think there's really implications and consequences for not communicating. But of course, again, it takes a lot of just confidence and a lot of pep talk to just convince yourself that it's important to do it. And many newbie science communicators are like, how do I do it? How do I even make my science more exciting? Because sometimes when I was, in my previous class for science communication, a lot of students say, I don't think my science is exciting. Okay. And people say, okay, if you work with animals, people are excited about these animals. So you can talk about all the animals and science. And if I work with just some engineer, I'm building things, people don't even care about that. So I think there's ways to even make the most even boring science fields into something exciting, something that, okay, really see the value of the work that is being done, and then also see the applications and the solutions that come out from the different fields. And people also, how do I use social media as a science communication platform? So there are many questions that newbies have, and I know that early on in my science communication journey, I also had same questions. But I think the good news again is beyond this, there's so many avenues to practice science communication. There's so many other avenues for us to disseminate our important work, from writing newspaper articles, from even contributing to the local news channels. They're always calling, if something is happening, they're always calling on scientists to comment about what is going on, to even bring more clarity to the public about the issue, and so on and so forth. Social media, from TikTok, you can use all these available channels to really share about science. Of course, local radio. I think there's so many, and in this 21st century, there's so many avenues. There's so many, it's a rainbow of opportunity to practice, to share, and to talk about our science and the science that is happening. So I think it's really important to find something and find an avenue, find your spot and run with it. And okay, there's a question.
Can we ask questions?
Yes. Please go ahead and ask questions.
Yeah, I was wondering, I guess a lot of these things, to me personally, seem a little bit high risk because of the lack of practice. Mm-hmm. And so, what would you recommend for, I would not necessarily feel comfortable on a podcast that everyone's going to see because, there's a high probability that I would mess up. Or I'll say something that, could be catastrophic for me, moving forward. So, how would you recommend sort of getting practice outside of these more outward-facing things?
That's a very good question. So you can even start with your colleagues. I would say you can start with just your circle of friends. I've had even people say, it started even at our family table, of just practicing, just even sharing things. And then, of course, I think if you're afraid to, I know there's that risk, things may just backfire. I may say something, but of course, the same, if you find that you said something that wasn't correct, you can also use the same platform to say, you know what, I apologize. I actually spoke wrongly about this. But also, we know that the nature of science is continuously changing. So I think also we can't be afraid to speak the results of today because we know they're continuously also changing. What we know today may be a little bit irrelevant tomorrow. But shouldn't we speak about what's happening today? I think not. So I would say start with your colleagues, your friends, and then, share it with your trusted peers that can, okay, does this make sense? And then keep growing, keep growing, and there's, in the end, you will find that courage to keep going. But don't just stay there and say, I'm afraid I'll say something that is going to be catastrophic for my career, and that's a genuine concern. But at the same time, I don't think it should stop you from growing. And you only keep growing when you do it. And once ask your peers to give you a very, very honest review and honest feedback. So you want to start with people that you trust. And then, in your department. And then, or sometimes, like the other day I was telling my students, there are textbooks that have already been written. You can start even, using these textbooks that already, those materials that is already verified. And you start there, and then as you work your way up, you're using already material that is already done. And then you can and if you mess up, You just apologize and you correct the mistake and you keep growing. So that's what I would recommend, but don't shut yourself off from really partaking of science communication. That's a good question. Any other question from the people that are listening and via Zoom and here? Okay, good. And yeah, please feel free to interrupt me at any moment and ask questions. So I think, and also outreach activities, for example, those are just very low-stake, opportunities to start practicing just even speaking, practicing sharing the knowledge, and before you know it, you start feeling that you're confident. Before you know it, you start getting better. And before, I think I always say okay, you've decided, okay, I think I'm going to try. I found the courage to just try to partake of science communication. So I think the first thing is always first sit down and reflect, really be honest with yourself. What is your goal in your science communication study? Do you, for example, just want to, at the end of the week, I just want to share about the things that happened in my research field that week? Or you could even start as the things that you learned in your classes that week. I know that, I think I've met a student that said, and they grew their followers because they said, every week I just shared the things that I learned in my class. I broke it down. I broke all these subjects I was learning. And people were just interested. And you could say, okay, and then, this week I just wanna be able to also, okay, I've published an article. I wanna share it in other accessible ways. So it's important to really define what you really want to get out of science communication. Is it just sharing the knowledge? Is it building yourself in your field so that you become an influencer, so that you become a go-to person into your field? Or you just want to become better in whatever goal, or you want to become visible. So it's important to define your goal. I think also it's important to just think bigger beyond your field, beyond your small field. For example, I'm an entomologist, but my research has broader implications. It has implications in food security and insecurity, for example, environment, for example. So there are these societal keywords that are always, if you listen to the radio, to TV, there are these buzzwords. There are societal buzzwords. They're there. Climate change. You hear all this COVID-19, public health. There's these very key, important words that almost you will hear, and everybody appreciates them. So you want to make sure that you start connecting, you're making these connections of your field, how it feeds on to this bigger keyword, and where is your research fitting in that? It's so important to do that, because your science can be just this small field. But if you take time, you step back, you'll find all these different connections, how your little knowledge feeds off to something bigger. And because eventually, we want to make sure that your work is also finding that broad appeal, because I bet you, most of the public don't really care about that. Probably that equipment that you worked on. So you want to really drill down and think of finding how to connect to the bigger discussions. Of course, you have to break down your science, and you have to, why you have to start thinking like the public. Why should they stop and listen to you, for example? Why is what you are talking important? So you have to do what? What should they do? You just want them to be listening and that's it? Those are things that, what is the broad issue? What is the problem? Or there could be no problem. You just want to share what you know. And who is the public here? So it could be your family. It could be just a group. Yes, the group that you're probably a bigger group, environmental club group. So who is that public? Or it could be just retired people, elderly people. You go for outreach in the hospital, and you go reach out to people. You go just share something important about it. And then what is the benefit? So it's important to really break down all this, and because as you do that, of course, you find different ways to speak and different ways to package what you want to talk about. Again, how you frame it matters, and this can continuously change based on the audience as well. So you also want to know, who is my audience? Who is this public? So if you're going to a retired home, you want to do at least a little bit of what do they care about, and find ways to connect, because you have to connect to this public. Otherwise, they will lose you, they will care less, and they don't care about the science that you want to talk about. So it's really up to us to really find ways to package what we are speaking about, the science, and really, and in an accurate and, of course, very accurate, reliable, well articulated. What is the story in your science? So all these things, it's important to really think about it, because how you frame it will vary, will depend on your audience. So there are many things to just consider. Of course, I mean, clear message is so important. Don't lose people. Start like talking as if you're writing a manuscript. I think you will lose them. So distill your message. Now we say, think of the coffee machine. Leave your science jargon at the filter stage, and really find ways to really get to the core of your message, but in not a boring way, because if it's boring, they will just move away. So it's quite it's a skill, it's an art, but you can learn it, you can improve it, and so on and so forth. Of course, again, clarity is going to be key. The movers and shakers are not the public. They're not really moved about your data, your methods, all this. Of course, it's so important. I want to tell you about how I got to my solution. I want to tell you about that method that was just so frustrating, and I was able to make a breakthrough, but chances are they don't care about that. So you really want to find a way how to connect and to break down the complexities of the science that you're doing. Any questions so far? Okay. So any questions from the people that are tuned in online? Okay, nothing. Good. So we'll continue. Again, exciting avenues. You can find them. TikTok. I haven't tried TikTok, and I'm still thinking, because you know what? That's where people are, and that's sometimes, I think, science communication is also, it's such a skill, because every time things are shifting, and if you don't get there, if you don't learn, then most chances are you will still lose that population that is out there. So I think it's important too. And as I said, you choose one way and then you run with it. For me, one of the science communication strategy that I've used, so I thought I plugged it in. Just 1 second. Okay, okay. So for me, one of the really method of science communication that I've excelled in is through writing op-eds. And why I chose to write, because I went for training in 2015. I was selected as an Aspen Institute New Voices, and I went for this op-ed training, and what I learned for me was like really eye-opening. I realized that because every time, again, as the TV, you find the same voices, and it's almost stale. And then I learned that it also is the same when it comes to diversity of thoughts and public intellectuals, the people that are contributing to the discussions of today, to the history of today. I realized that it's the same voices. And guess what? That really, we can't afford to just only listen to a few. We know that there is diversity is strength. Diversity in just the thoughts, in ideas, is what builds nations. Is what really allows us to come up with concrete solutions. And really, diversity is strength, including diversity of thought. And who is writing? Because who is writing is making history. And, newspapers, journals, they're happy to have the same voices because it's easier. Because when something happens, they want something written, and if you don't train yourself, you're not out there, chances are you won't. So I learned that, and I was like, okay, this is wrong, because I think my idea matter, my thoughts, how I'm thinking about an issue, how I'm thinking about just a challenge is important. It should be out there. And so once again, why should you? Op-eds, of course, they're well argued. So it's not, of course, somebody can say it's not, peer review, it's not something, but it takes time. When I write these things, I do take time to read through peer-reviewed articles, read through verified, trusted, reliable sources of information, and then use that information to argue my point or my view. So there's a lot of intellectual thought that goes into this. Okay, thank you. Question?
Does, the University of Illinois or other institutions that you've been affiliated with, do they have, regulations or any rules about putting out opinion pieces, being affiliated to them, or is it sort of you can put out your piece and okay? I didn't know if they had any say in it as a professor at the institute.
So I think they actually, I've not heard that it's blockage doing that, and actually they even have, there's a program that actually brings in the op-ed writers to actually train professors how to do it. So it's actually, I think it's again encouraged, because at the end of the day, we are building in these public intellectuals, we are building in people that actually are actively doing the work, and they are, amplifying the work that's being done out there. So contributing intellectually, I think public, engaging with the public is encouraged. Of course, I'm not writing things that don't make sense. So again, at the end of the day, I know that, yes, everything that you write belongs to you. Internet never forgets. So that's the one thing about science communication. Anything you do, it will never be forgotten. So, you have to put a thought and do something that's constructive rather than, and speak up, because if we don't, again, the same voices will speak. Again, the same, and this will be shaping policies, will be shaping ideas, and we can't afford to. For so long, we know we've listened to the same voices. We can't. I think, too, there is that. And, of course, to inform and to contribute and shape important conversations of our time. Because we know that, yes, these conversations are happening. And whoever tells the story, whoever is writing, is making history. And is really shaping up what's going on. And then, of course, I think this is a very, from the op-ed project, yes, we know that from ideas, from writing this op-eds and other ideas and forums, of course, as you write it, you also build your credibility as a person. You also build exposure. You become an influencer in the end. And that's how we build public intellectuals. And it's important. It's important to have very different voices speaking out. And sometimes, there's can lead to policy consulting invitations and so on and so forth. Indeed, there are many benefits that can come with just writing, communicating, and finding ways to communicate your work. So I think it's important. Again, I'll quickly go through this because, again, before you just launch into writing, again, know your goal. Why are you doing that? For me, when I do that, food insecurity is a big issue. I grew up in the Kenyan coast. I have seen what food insecurity, the challenges. I've seen what my research is. I build in my lived-in experience with the research and the field and seeing where I'm going to continue to bring in ideas. And I see a question. Yes, please.
I was just curious. I think it's really interesting that you were up at those curious, how did you get started, and how do they normally choose to write about that? Or what is that?
That's a good question. How did I get started? Back in 2015 when I was selected in for this fellowship that when we were in South Africa, learned how to just, first of all, it was just clear that whoever is writing and is publicly influencing thoughts and ideas is one same group. And I knew I had been trained, I knew I actively do, and it was clearly there was an argument to there's a need to start writing. And so I learned, as I said, science communication is a skill. I was taught the art of doing it, what is required, and this is how you do it. And then I launched in. And how do they decide your voice is important? Again, as I said, also I think the journals and all these spaces, they've had the same idea, so they almost feel, I think, themselves. So they actually are really excited when they have new people writing in. So you can, all this, many of the newspapers, many of the journals will have puppet section, for example. If you have something, you just write it out. There's an opportunity, you can submit it. And then if they like the arguments, they'll say, okay, can you write the full op-ed? So so it can be through just going through the channels that are available. Again, as you write, then you also build a network. For example, I started with Aspen, so they had already a network of editors. And so I said, okay, if you're writing for Guardian, if you're writing for the New York Times, these are the editors, these are the emails. So email them and find out. And so that's how. And of course, as people read your work, then people also either they get excited, like, okay, I will. I mean, I've had editors say, can you write for us this? Something is happening in the news. Can you tell us what you think about it? Can you? So that happens as well, but it has taken years to build that. So thank you. Yes.
Yeah, we have a comment in the chat.
Yes.
For anyone who is interested in gaining more experience with science communication and science journalism, the AAAS Mass Media Fellowship is an amazing program to gain more experience in this area. I can't recommend it enough.
Awesome. Thank you for that. And there are many resources. I'll say, at the end is, one of the slides at the end is 6 resources. First of all, the universities, before the COVID, I know there were many workshops that were happening within the universities, science communication workshops. In your professional society, I belong to the Entomological Society of America. See, in the annual meetings, they have opportunities. And then AAS has many fellowships and many programs for science communication, for really growing yourself, workshops. Go to 1, 2, 3. I mean, be hungry for this knowledge. For I know that when I started, I started with Aspen, and every other workshop on science communication, if I could apply, I applied for it because I wanted to learn. And then I think there's also the other opportunities, and I can eventually find out. Societies, again, AAAS, the society that in professional society you're in, find that out. The university has science communication workshop, enroll. If you're on social media, right now we live in a world where you can connect to a workshop that's happening in the UK, in whatever is happening. Use these opportunities to build yourself. So thanks for the comment, the person that is commented. Okay, so again, I'll go quickly because I think I'm running out of time. Again, think about what you want to write. How is it connected to the bigger societal challenge words? And then find the story in your science story or in your storyline. How does what you want to say creatively? Because in the end, you have to hook your reader. You have to steal their attention. You have to make sure that they actually are interested in reading something. So you have to be very creative. It takes a lot of creativity. And those first sentences are so important. You either really draw them in or they just okay, next. And because there's so many, I think if USA Today, all these, they have op-eds, they're continuously updating them. Every day there's a new one. And so how do you make yours stand out there? Again, before you launch, what is the problem? Why is it important? What is your call to action? Do you have any message, or is it just writing? If there's nothing, Is there any new way of seeing things that you want the public to see, or to think of an issue, or to speak up against, like right now we're dealing with COVID-19 vaccine. Just so the developed countries have already so many, they have booster shots. The developing countries, we still have so few that have been vaccinated. If we are together as one, so, what are you trying to say? Are you speaking up against something? Because I think, all these challenges are here, and someone has to speak up. Again, as I say, this is the structure of op-ed. Like any mode of science communication, there will be a structure, find that structure, and then, as I said, follow that structure. And, you will get it done. There's the lead, the idea, your argument, to be sure, call to action, and conclusion. The lead just grabs your reader's attention. It's around something that's happening. So unfortunately, you have to find a way to connect what you want to talk with what is happening that day. That's the way the world works. So you can't be talking about something that happened 2000. Nobody is going to. So that's the sad side of science communication. You all consistently have to find what's going on today and connect. And then of course, consistently use peer-reviewed research to back your arguments. I spend a lot of time just looking at what is being published, what has been published very recently, what is the state of the thing that I'm talking about. If it's hunger I'm speaking about, what is the latest report? How many people are hungry as we speak? What's the latest state of climate-related extremities, hurricane, flooding? So where are we? So I'm using very recent data to really bring my arguments of what should be done. Yes, question?
Yeah, I was curious, what audience do you most often find yourself targeting when you're writing these? Is it just sort of like maybe other academics who aren't necessarily in that area, or like just my mom or like friends?
That's a very good question. So audience again is a very important, because it then dictates what you're writing about. So for many, like I have different audiences, policymakers. Sometimes I'm targeting policymakers, people that are actually making decisions that are going to impact citizens. Sometimes I'm just targeting people that are influencers that I know will use what they know to argue for something to happen. And sometimes I'm just so most of the time not targeting my colleagues, because they already know. Most of the time, because I'm now passing over my colleagues to the wider public. And most of the time I'm targeting just the public, sharing what's happening, what's the state of things. So, but it's important, because then when you know the audience, when you know your target, you'll really argue and make sure that you have written whatever you're writing to target that. If it's policy, you want to make sure that you have the data as it is, so that they know, okay, water issue, at the moment, say 60% don't have access. So you really, then they have the talking points, they have recent data. So you really, based on your audience, then you will be writing. And sometimes, sometimes I write for NPR. NPR sometimes, it's just public, and sometimes my NPR editor would just people say, Esther, this is just too scientific. It's too technical. I've had so many times to say, can you break it down further? Can you just, and sometimes I'm still a scientist. I still every time get into the hurdles of an editor telling me, it's too much. You're not being, make it conversational, make it relatable, make it so. I always have to really go back and find ways. I've had, even op-eds that I've written, then I have, even when I find it, this is a conversational one. You can almost see it. So it changes too. Yes.
My next question is related to that. So do you find that that's often the determination you make, or that the venue makes the audience? Is there like a mix?
I think it's a mix, and sometimes it's a very specific. So sometimes it's just a very specific audience that we're targeting. Sometimes it's just editors. There's we really want, this is happening. This could be an opportunity to tell us what's going on. And sometimes it's just me. saying what I really need to say. And if you don't want to take what I'm saying, I'll move to the next one. And so sometimes you as the writer have to decide, what was the message? Why did I write this? Because then if you had your goal charts and everything really well, then you know that, okay, if that outlet doesn't like it, you know what, I'll just push it out there because this is the goal. And normally you can't tell me to dilute it or change it because then we are going to, then I've ceased to achieve the goal. And sometimes you just have to also work with. You know, sometimes I've seen things that I've written and they were this way and they dance around through the many drafts and finally it's sometimes even better. And I look at it and I'm like, wow. I have, you know, and this, for instance, is one that I wrote for Wired magazine, and the way it started and the way it ended up, it was just such a drastic, it was like night and day. But at the end, I really loved it, and it ended up just being so impactful. And I was like, yeah, it's, you know, sometimes it's a give and take. And sometimes you're like, okay, I'm not giving anything today. I'm just going to stay with it. So yes, and then of course arguments. What are you arguing for, or what are you arguing against? I use it always based on evidence and credible evidence. To be sure, of course, you know, every argument has a counter argument. It's important to know that. And it's a way also to ensure that you're opening up for discussions. And now I'm running out of time. So I spoke a lot. And I can, you know, in the call to action, what is your call to action? So what do you want your audience to do? Again, conclusion, what do you want your readers to do when they read your op-ed? Are you arguing for policy change? Are you arguing for, hey, we can be better as a society? Hey, we can do, you know, this part of a region of the world still needs X and Y. So it's important to do that. Why, you know, again, when you finish, again, what is my goal? Send it to your peers. If they don't, even your circle of friends, if they don't find it interesting, chances are nobody will find it interesting. Can I make it better? Can I consistently make it better? Why op-eds get published? Because they offer fresh perspectives, and they're needed. They're so needed. Okay, teaching is always very, I think, leading on to her question, how do you find editors? There's a lot. Once you write, you know, there's pitching, you will have to share it, you know, with editors, or editors might have pitched to you and said, we want you to write. So again, it's a give and take, but of course you have to write to them and say, why now? Why your voice? What are you talking about? What's the unexpected point of view? What's that fresh perspective that hasn't been had for quite a while? Then, of course, give editors time. If they like it, they like it. If they don't like it, they don't like it. And then you'll move on, and it's not personal. So don't take it. It's just like peer review. You send a manuscript, it gets rejected. Are you going to? Yeah, it's just you either move along, you know, improve it, and keep going. So that's a very, you know, just a refusal doesn't mean anything. Again, I think you asked the question, how did I start? It was this fellowship that really opened my eyes. Thank you to Aspen Institute. I mean, it was really, and that was 2015. And again, I've used my voice to talk about, you know, things, you know, vanish hunger on university campuses, for example. That was something that is still there. A lot of students within our campuses are hungry. And so how do we expect them to be participating in classes if we don't ensure that they have food? So it's upon the universities to really make sure that we care for our students. I've talked about, you know, the microbes that I'm working. How do we ensure that they are used widely? And of course, yeah, sometimes insects, you can also eat them. So you know, my voice has been just out there, and I appreciate it. Again, you know, yes. And, you know, for example, you said, who am I targeting? I remember that op-ed that I wrote, it was, at the end of the day, it ended up appearing in many other publications from Arabic, and that for me is impact, when you really cross the borders of the academics. When actually governments, I saw it being posted in Jordan Times, so, you know, I saw it even in Indian Times. I've seen, you know, some of just writings really take their legs and just move, and really in governments and countries, it's like, okay, what, really I've seen impacts that is beyond just my imagination. Eventually, as I said, as you grow, you are invited to write even policy or consultation documents. This one was Feed the Future, US Feed the Future, a policy document, and that ended up with the technical brief that ended up being shared in 30 different countries. So there's sometimes impact that, again, it's hard to. So again, you ask, how do I do it? There's so many science communication trainings and workshops out there at the universities. I think annual conferences, this ComSciCon, I think they always organize this workshop for graduate students. So there are many, many opportunities. Tap onto them, learn, explore, and just keep growing, I think. Again, thank you for listening to me today. I teach also IB Science Communication course. And I believe that, the best ideas, regardless of where and who has them, should have a chance to shape our society. It benefits the society and the public when we share what we know. And I think, I would urge all of us, make your science and knowledge count, your ideas spread, and your impact rise. And with that, thank you for listening, and any questions? I was sharing. I'm happy to receive questions. Yes.
We did have somebody in the chat who was praising your science communication course here at U of I.
Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate that. Thank you. Yes.
Do you have any practice with science communication before your fellowship, or is that your very first introduction?
You believe in me, that was my first introduction to science communication. I was just like every other, graduate student, doing my work, doing my research, and accumulating all this knowledge, because you really heavily read as a PhD student. Heavily read in the classes and everything. So just all this burning knowledge that was, I was just using it for classes, to pass my exams, to write my proposals, to do everything that's required of me as a scholar and a scientist, as a professor. But until then I was just like everyone. I not jumped into the science communication world, but after that, they say things never were the same. So I'm always grateful for the Aspen Institute, and they still actively have these fellowships every year, and people have written to, from New York Times, really, you see these voices begin to show up, and people are impacting how things, they're speaking up of things, they're changing things. It's really amazing. It's been an amazing journey, and I'm still growing, so I haven't I still grow every day. I still find opportunities to keep growing. It never ends. So thanks for that question. Any other questions from the people that were tuned in? Thanks for even staying to. Any other questions from my internet? For those tuned in via Zoom, thanks for staying, actually. Okay, appreciate that. Okay, seeing no talk and no questions, is it safe for me to end the recording or to end my computer right now? Is that okay? Okay, thank you.